Hello and welcome to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundeel Cars, Ireland's favourite car buying website. With the widest selection of cars from certified trusted dealerships, most Irish drivers find their next car on Dundeel Cars. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Paddy. What's the story? How are you?
Good,
You've
good
been busy this
you.
week.
Yeah, quite a busy week. How's your week been, firstly?
It's also been being a bit frantic. I haven't yet, but I'm off after this to collect a Volkswagen Golf. Because I just thought, obviously you get the natural feed of press cars every week and every month and what's on. But I just thought, and I think from chatting to you as well, the Golf has had a bit of it's almost an underground car now. It sells itself maybe.
Yeah, I remember speaking to Martin Cardiff, who was on the podcast a few weeks back, and he was saying that the Golf has really seen a resurgence for them, and it's quite an expensive car now. The new,
the Orline, yeah.
No, but any of them now new are pretty expensive. I don't think there's such a thing as a cheap one. I remember a time when I worked there that there was one that snuck in under 20 grand.
Yeah,
and there was 19,995, and those days are gone for sure. So, it does really well for them now, because there's a bit of a thing where people are like, look, I don't want an SUV, and I'm not really sure I want an EV.
Maybe, yeah.
So just give me a Golf.
I just want to find out, is it still a relevant car in 2025/6?
Do you know what? You are going to get into that thing, and it's going to feel like wrapping a warm blanket around yourself, because it'll just be so familiar, so nice. Everything is in the right place. Sure, they messed around a little bit with the haptic buttons and the controls, but I think that's going to be fixed. For me, 7 or 7.5 was peak Golf. I remember having a 7.5 GTI manual in tungsten, and it was all the car you need. I so regret not buying that car, because obviously, I would say I would still have it. It just did everything right. It wasn't even bad on fuel, but I didn't put any options on it, out of the wrapper. What a car. So yeah, I missed that one.
So that's what I'm doing later on. I've also been torturing myself because, I've had an expensive week with my own car. I spent €1,500 at Dave O'Brien, Porsche specialists in Ballymount, who do excellent work. Like all good specialists, they're not necessarily the cheapest person you can get your car fixed at, but I had a thing called a tandem pump on my 911 sorted. So my driveway is no longer covered or being dripped in oil.
So I watched the video, Mark, and I really like these updates on the 911. They're very relatable. And what struck me is you showed that work, in inverted commas, if you're not on videos of doing the rabbit ears, that was done on your car to patch things up. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
In the sense of what else needs to be done?
No, sorry, they showed a clip on the video where there was, it looked like patch up job done on the car.
Literally patch up, yeah. So Dave sent me a photograph a few hours into the job and said someone was here before.
Yeah,
I said,
not in a good way, I suspect.
No, I said, is that car putty? And he sent back a laughy face going, well, kind of. It's a metal kind of sealant. So a tandem pump, as far as I know, is actually a porous part. I don't know why Porsche put porous parts on cars, but they do, and they did. So it will always go over time. But obviously, just to get that car back on the road, maybe it was in between being sold somewhere along the line. I don't even know when it was done or who did it. Basically, it's like this green, slimy looking sealant that, and you could see actually at the bottom where someone is like a pinhole had obviously formed, and that's where, because the oil wasn't bursting out of the car, it was still driving and all that, and there was no oil lights or anything on, so it wasn't leaking enough oil to even justify the light coming on. So that basically just gave way. But it just shows you that, it doesn't matter what the car is, if it is in between a sale, or maybe it's gone to a trader and someone just wants a quick fix, and let's get it back on the road again. So yeah, I suppose it's another reminder. I didn't in this car get a pre-purchase inspection. You can get them done for about €400. They put cameras into the car to check for bore scoring. They'll do the usual appraisal of everything that could potentially be a problem down the road or whatever. I think definitely worth getting done if you're buying anything exotic.
Would that issue have come up? Would that have been a deep dive enough in the inspection?
I would imagine so, particularly if it was leaking. So my understanding is this part is actually, they had to take the exhaust off to get at this part. So I don't know, would you have visually seen it, but Dave was able to have a look when the car was up at a ramp, looking at the RMS part of the underneath the car, and said, well, that's not leaking yet, but it will in the next 12 months. You need that sorted. So I think that's the other beauty. A lot of people were commenting saying, oh, specialists, any old mechanic can work on these cars. Of course they can. Lots of the parts have a VW badge on them, I suspect. But the point is, when you're used to seeing these cars every day, it's like going to your GP. You can Google it, right? But if you go to your GP and you have to show them something or explain something, there's a good chance they've seen it before.
And I always use the analogy: does anyone want to get the cheapest vasectomy?
Exactly.
Sure, you can. You can probably get your butcher to do it. But
did you go to the same guy I recommended, or did you go somewhere else?
I went to a place in Bath Avenue. I found the most expensive one I could find for that reason. Yeah, so I think that's one of those things. I searched by price for vasectomies.
Tell you what, you could get 3 vasectomies done for the price of a tandem pump on a 911.
Right. So yeah, either way, your tandem pump is removed.
And one or the other is not reversible.
No. I want to start this week with a question mark. Have electric cars become too fast already? It comes on foot of news that the U9 Extreme, previously known as the U9 Track Edition, which is that very expensive BYD, has set a top speed record of 496.22 kilometers per hour at Germany's automotive testing Papenburg in September, surpassing the 490.48 kilometers set by the Bugatti in 2009.
Is this the Yang Wang, or is this a spin-off? The Yang Wang.
Yang Wang. The world's now the fastest car. But so obviously with electric vehicles, they can just go bananas with horsepower and inverted commas. So it does, an interesting video that I saw on Wired, to give credit to them. And it was posing the question, have EV manufacturers lost the plot already? Now, obviously, this car was just to show what can be done, but showcased in that video that there is now a Volvo EX30 dual motor that has a faster 0 to 100 kilometer time than a Porsche 911T. So a car that is aimed at sort of urban environments, families. Volvo, probably one of the world's safest car brands, is producing a car that has that sort of acceleration, 3.5 seconds, I think it is, to 100 kilometers per hour. And the question is, why is this happening? Is it necessary? And would these manufacturers not be better off focusing on the thing that people want, which is range?
It's a good question. It's something that I've thought of a lot. And also Volvo are always the one that kind of starts the conversation, because they are, famous for being so safe. But for quite a long time, actually, they have been producing even the recharge versions, which could have been plug-in hybrids. They had like 400 plus brake horsepower, twin motors, nothing to do with Polestar. These were just, and you can get the Öhlins dampers on them. And are they overcompensating for the added weight? Is it just to, give another USB to EVs to make them a bit more attractive? But there is no doubt. I mean, even an ID4 now has it's nearly 300 brake horsepower car. 20 years ago, an E46 M3 had slightly more brake horsepower. And I actually am surprised we don't see more accidents with them, where people just aren't aware of how quick they can be. Maybe just people get used to them quickly. I don't know what it is, but they, your average family car now has way more brake horsepower than it would have if it was a 1.5.
Well, I would put forward that the people who are buying them aren't interested necessarily in the speed. They have them. We're not necessarily seeing the accidents, perhaps because they're just not being driven like that by the people who buy them. Petrol heads like petrol cars, and there's that cohort hasn't moved across just yet to the EV. So maybe we're not seeing those accidents, but it struck me as a really valid point. If you're think of some of the Polestars, the dual motor Polestars, again, absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. So, where are we going to go to that? Where is the point where they're going to say, right, this is enough? Because how quickly do you need to get to 100 kilometers per hour? Is there? I would imagine that even on a road that allows it, it's not a particularly safe thing to try and do, is to get there as quickly as possible.
No, and quite often the suspensions can't really cope with the power. Like that's the overriding fact that I thought with the BYD C-Line 7 was dual motor. And I got a lot of BYD fans in the YouTube comments telling me I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And it's just very simple fact. The brakes didn't feel capable of bringing that 500 plus brake horsepower car to a stop. The suspension couldn't cope with it. It was uncomfortable. It was body roll. You could see the chassis trying its best to manage the power through a corner. And as you say, would these cars not be way more efficient, extracting more range if they had, I'm not saying half, but I drove the new Kia EV4 last week in Malaga. It's 200 brake horsepower, front wheel drive car. It was plenty. Loads of torque anyway. Loads of power. Plenty of power.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in the AA before, one of my several jobs, and at the time, EVs were sort of just coming on stream into the mainstream because ID4 and the likes had come. And a lot of the initial problems from the AA's point of view were tires, particularly, 2-3 tires at once failing. So that's on the back of a truck. You can't tow something like that because it's 2.2 tons. And various other components, suspensions were having issues because huge weight, sometimes shitty roads, and the result is that some of these were having issues. So again, the basic one had 204 horsepower. So it just seems like an unusual situation. Following on from that, though, a car I wanted to talk about this week is one that I have outside, which is the Ford Mustang Mach-E. And I was on my travels again, as I do, and from Dublin to Cork earlier towards the tail end of the last week. And we'd spoken last week about the Citroen EC3. This is a totally different prospect. And it's a car that I've really warmed to. Get similar size battery, 44 kilowatt hour battery, a little bit more expensive, obviously, to purchase, but just radically different performance from this car. I mean, radically different. No trip computer in the Citroen, so I figured out that I was doing about 19 or 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer on the motorway, 100 kilometers per hour. No air conditioning on now, and I had some comments from people. No one drives at 100 kilometers per hour on the motorway, apart from the trucks, obviously, which are restricted.
Oh, people speed like.
Yeah, so
you could do 120 to Cork, can't you? Yeah,
you can do. Sorry, the limit is 120, but some people were giving out that I was driving at 100 kilometers per hour. Now I was in the left-hand lane. There's no trucks overtaking me.
It's not a target. It's not a target. To quote the Gardaí.
Yeah, so the reason I do that is just for continuity. Look, it's you could do 120, but physics, in a heavier car, it takes an awful lot more effort to get from 100 to 120. So I tend to stick to 100, and I just leave the aircon off just for control.
It's also a very relevant test because one of the questions you get is for people, can I do the longer journeys in an EV? So, and you're not always doing them in large battery size cars. You're doing them in something like the Puma Gen-E, and it seems to be quite efficient.
It is efficient. So in this car, now I was leaving at about 16 degrees, and I was getting 12 or 13 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers in that car. So just a radically different performance. And the trip computer in that is also quite conservative, because when it shows that you're down at sort of 18, 19%, it seems to almost be, adjusted down so that your range is, your available range technically, if you're working out, right, I'm driving 100 kilometers per hour, my battery's this size, it was showing me that I had 29 kilometers of range left, whereas I probably had about 37 kilometers of range. It was actually erring on the side of caution for that. But so from last week's one, where I was stopped at Douro and gave up because I wasn't going to get to Fermoy, I arrived at Fermoy with about 20% battery. And just really, really impressive. So,
and
actually, it wasn't 20%, but I had 37 kilometers of range left. I think it was 12% battery. Sorry, but and that totally different.
That resulted then in a stop to charge for how long?
So, I would always have to go. I would probably, unless it's a fairly big batteried car, I would generally have to stop somewhere because I live another 40 minutes from Fermoy. So I've chosen Fermoy as my destination for, because I can work out pretty much everything from the range doing that set test from Sandyford to Fermoy. So I stopped and charged, and the Puma was gobbling down charge at speeds of 80, 90 kilowatts, which was pretty impressive. So I was on my way again pretty soon, and it's also one of the most entertaining cars of those CVs that I've driven in some time. You've spent time in this, by the way, have you?
Only abroad. I don't know how the Ford booking is working these days. Do they contact you, or how does that work?
I went. I couldn't make the launch, so I asked for a date instead. So I probably got it reasonably early. But it's really entertaining to drive on a back road. It's has some of the when Fords were fun wired into it. There's a bit of a sound to it when you push it on, and
it's a nice seating position.
Yeah, you can get that. You can have that feel. Sit up and drive position. So really impressive car.
It's been perhaps not last year, but it's been quite regularly the best-selling car in the UK.
Yeah, in the UK,
Puma, not the the electric version. So that's why I suppose they really do have to try and make it as not that they're making the car efficient just for the UK market, but it's a pretty big market for them. If you're trying to get someone out of a Puma into an electric one, you can't be offering them half the range of their petrol one, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was on LMFM in Drogheda last week, and the presenter Jerry Kelly is a Puma owner and is now considering getting this one. And he said something that struck him was the fact that in the standard for Puma there was only one stalk, and all the controls were on one stalk. And in the electric version, you go back to having two stalks again. It seems like there was more effort put into the
boot is also ridiculous. Both myself and Dave Humphreys managed. Not at the same time, but we both climbed into the boot. There's 100 kilo load
Megabox
in the Megabox. So unless you're particularly overweight or maybe a very tall person, you'll fit. That can take your weight. You could wash a small child in it. You could, put the football boots from the training sessions with the kids, and there's a drain hole in the bottom of it. So it is actually a very practical car, and there's a lot more interior space than you would expect. It's just a little bit expensive. It needs a little bit of a haircut.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the one I have is 41 grand. I think it starts at 32.
You see, like you could buy
is very well equipped.
Really, I know, but you could buy an X-Pine G6 for that.
Oh, of course.
Close to it anyway.
Of course. And look, if the sales numbers don't stack up, I would imagine you'll see a haircut soon.
You could buy a Leap Motor C10, which I've been driving this week. Again, not exactly price for price, but starting from 39 grand. I don't look. I haven't made the video. Well, I haven't made the video yet, so I don't too many spoilers.
Don't give it away.
I do feel you're kind of a beta tester driving that car right now.
Oh, really? It's like, tell us what they said.
So,
all right, we'll fix that.
It is quite efficient. It's 15 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And again, it has it's about 218 brake horsepower to the rear wheels. Loads of power. Absolutely loads of power. I was thoroughly enjoying winding someone up last night between the M50 and my house. It was in an Insignia or something with end plates on the car. And
right.
They just
to be worried. Yeah.
Every time the lights went green, you could hear them revving the hell out of it, and then within about 3 seconds, the C10 was just gone.
Yeah. How much is that car again?
So it starts from 39. There's a range extender version with a 1.5 petrol engine, which never actually drives the front wheels. It tops up the battery.
So you're in the EV or the?
I'm in the EV.
Right.
The interior is very spacious. It could look like any other car. People who just have a passing interest in cars this week said to me, "Oh God, that looks like a Porsche Jeep or a Range Rover Sport. It's in black." Yeah, it could be. But the only thing is, like little quirky things, like so the seat comes back to get you into the car, easy entry. It's called. Sometimes it returns to your saved spot. Sometimes it doesn't. If you've ever been in a BMW, were the first time I encountered this, where you put the car in reverse and the mirror on the passenger side dips down to help you park the car, not curb your wheels. It dips in the C10. Sometimes it doesn't come back. It stays dipped.
Right. Okay.
When does
it come back?
And then to manipulate it, you've got to go to a screen to adjust it, like in a Tesla. But a Tesla's even probably quicker. What way do you push down the button when you want to open an electric window, Paddy?
I would push it down.
Yeah, no, it's up in a C10.
So you pull up for the windows to go down.
You push up for the windows to go down, and you push down for the windows to go up.
Right.
I don't know why.
Is it for the Australian market? Works
fine
now.
What way does the water go down the bath over there? So when you open the door to get out, some cars now have this safe exit warning to, they'll tell you if there's a pedestrian or cyclist coming up on your inside. The C10 just puts the driver's side indicator on when you open the door. Now, I don't know if that's on purpose or not. They claim they can do over-the-air updates. They've done 26 over-the-air updates since the car was first tested by media. It still needs some more over-the-air updates.
Right. Yeah. Do you want to plug it in and just leave it for a day or two and see what happens? Let the magic happen. It's look, I mean, it's too early for you to say. I know the video's probably out next week, is it? But what can you give us a couple of bits you like and don't like?
The interior space is fantastic. The boot's only okay. The boot's about 430. So a Kia EV3, a Skoda Elrock, both have bigger boots, and the C10 is like it's a bigger footprint of car. But the interior rear leg room is amazing. So if you have teenagers or young adults in your family, it would be great for that. My only main gripe is, it's a bit like little Johnny has the potential but could do better in school. That's kind of how I feel. Like with some over the air update tweaks even, it will be a better car. It's got McPherson and a 5-link independent suspension on the back, so it absorbs bumps. It's got the usual SUV body roll, but I just that space now is so competitive, a bit like now as we're seeing with the smaller cars. So there's other things on the market that will, software wise at least, perform better, but it is very efficient for a big car.
But I'm already starting to struggle to tell the differences between some of the new Chinese entrants when I see them on the road. Like I look at them and I go, "Oh, is that that again?" So yeah, there's it's going to take a while to pull those bed in.
It's separate, and I'm not going to hide behind it. Quite often under Chinese branded cars, you get comments about human rights issues, and obviously they have to be getting state funding to make these cars the price they are. Yesterday, from my other hat, my Radio Nova hat, I was just doing some prep for the show, and there's a film that was out in Sundance at the start of the year, and it was basically about a same-sex couple story. And there's a shower scene where a guy is naked, but the Chinese version has been altered. So they put steam into the scene so you couldn't see his parts. And then there's another part of the film where they put a woman's head on a man's head because you can't have any of that over here. And then I did it more.
There's no one gay in China, of course.
No, well, they're not very accepting of LGBTQ plus rights and stuff. So, like Florence Pugh in Oppenheimer, she was in the birthday suit. They AI'd a black dress onto her.
Right.
So they're fully, and this is common practice in China. Now, not that all Chinese people agree with it, but it does give you a little snapshot into it is a different world. And many of us haven't been to China on our holidays.
No.
So unless you have been
like
there,
to go though. I'd like to
there are colleagues of ours who have been. It would not be unusual for them to go into your room on a press trip and help themselves to a little look through your bag and what you're writing and what you're taking pictures of.
Right.
And, it is a very different place. And I'm not being, European car pro here versus Chinese. I think ultimately people will vote with their pockets, and maybe if European manufacturers can make their cars more affordable, everyone wins out of this. But there definitely is an argument that humans living in China don't necessarily get the same freedom and liberties that we do in this part of the world.
That we enjoy, for sure. Well, look, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back after the break to talk about.
I can't see you there, Paddy. There's some steam coming over your.
Oh, sorry, I've been moved out of the way. Yeah, we're gonna come back and talk about a new product that diagnoses the state of health of your battery, and we'll have a quick chat about used EV values after the break. Welcome back to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundee Cars, Ireland's favourite website for car buying. With more certified, trusted dealers than anywhere else, you're sure to find the right car for you on dundeal.ie.
So one of your many projects this week was to go talk to people about stuff.
Yeah. I went to Kildare. I was in Kill, down at Goffs, basically. There's a golf club down there, and it was to see something that I'd heard about before. I'd spoken to them years ago when I was in the AA, but it's a company called Avaloo, and Avaloo don't make toilets. They make
Javaloo, love.
Do you Avaloo? I do Avaloo. They make a diagnostic system which is very simple to use. That tells you the state of health, the SOH, and that phrase is going to be one that we get very familiar with over the next while, of a battery. So it doesn't have to be just an EV. It can obviously be a plug-in hybrid battery, and it's very simple to use. It's a flash sort of drive that goes into the OBD. It's a little box, and you plug that into the onboard diagnostic system. You have to plug the seatbelt in, turn the car on, then turn it back off, put it into drive, and then put it back into park. And then 3 minutes later, you can see the box doing its thing, dancing lights. 3 minutes later, you get a report sent to your mobile phone or your desktop or whatever. And for anyone on video, I'm just going to briefly show you one here. For those listening, it is a battery certificate, which has, this was on a BMW 5 Series plug-in 530e. Mileage was 65,000 kilometers, and the state of health was 91.5%. They also had a full EV, which was a Mercedes-Benz EQC 400 with an 85 kilowatt hour battery. Mileage on that was 37,928 kilometers. State of health 97.8. So two different cars, similar enough vintage, I suppose, but two quite different results. And what really struck me about this, Mark, is that state of health in an EV or a plug-in hybrid, for me, potentially more so with the BEV, it's probably a better marker when buying a used EV than mileage.
Oh, well, it's the new. Has the timing belt been done? How many services has it had? And that is a brilliant product because it gives, I'd assume, a lot of peace of mind to people if they're buying a used car. And I think we've spoken about this before. You're going to see more of this on windscreens in used forecourt premises because again it gives you reassurance. So was that was a G35 series, was it? Because there is a 530e in the new model, but there's not that many of them around.
No, it's G30. Yeah, it was a couple of years old.
So that was always kind of a 40-50 kilometer range car.
Yeah. So but so you're now working off 90% of that at maximum.
Yeah. So and that's a car that can't do fast charging. So that was only charged at someone's house, or a maximum of, I don't even know, does it do 7 kilowatt? It might be 3.6 or something.
I think it's slow. But interestingly enough, and we'll hear from Alex Millinger later, asking him, and they've done 300,000 of these tests so far. So they've 300,000 data points, individual cars that they've data on.
A lot of research.
And it's amazing to ask, what are the factors that contribute to your battery, the state of health of your battery dropping. And they're ones that we probably knew about. Fast charging, repeated fast charging. It heats the battery up significantly, and they are seeing quite a significant effect. I had wrongly assumed that you could charge to 100% frequently enough if you were doing it at home or on a wall box or whatever, that it wasn't really going to be too much of an issue. No, I was wrong on that.
Yeah,
they want people to charge no more than 90%. They're seeing, for the best sort of results, they would say, okay, we don't drive too aggressively. Obviously there's, we were just talking before the break about cars having crazy acceleration and doing all sorts of 3.5 seconds. If people are doing that, they're affecting the state of health of their battery. if they're charging almost entirely on fast chargers. And when you consider, like, I, over the course of my week with most press cars, only fast charge because I might head to Dublin, stop at Fermoy, charge, go to Dublin, turn around, stop at, Junction 14 and go again. So a constant rotation of fast charging. And there are probably lots of people who, for a living, spend time driving around, the country, and they're probably only fast charging or majority fast charging. And it'll be interesting to see what that is doing to the state of health of the cars. Now, it doesn't mean that, all cars are going to be wrecked after a couple of years. He told me the example of a Tesla Model 3 that they had seen 400,000 kilometers on, and the state of health of the battery was 86%, which is incredible.
Yeah, it is. I've seen a lot of videos of Model S's as well with high mileage and similar. Like years and years ago, like 10 years ago, one of the first drones I ever bought from DJI had a feature built in that if you charge the batteries to 100% and you didn't use it, by day 5, they would automatically discharge to 50%. So we've always known this about lithium-ion batteries. Maybe LFPs are slightly less susceptible to this. But unless you're doing, like, if you're doing a big long journey in the morning, charge your car to 100% overnight, no problem. But don't do that all the time. And, the problem is leaving fully charged. Any of those batteries are bursting full of energy.
Yeah.
And if it's sitting there at 100%, it's got nowhere to expel that energy.
Yeah, and I suppose, we've been talking recently about long journeys. I did a quick video during the week about charging curves, using the Citroen as an example. So many people don't understand the charging curve, and the fact that, okay, when you charge these cars at chargers, the car itself is going to slow down the speed of the charge to protect the battery. So, we've all been in situations where we're waiting for a charging point and someone there is charging to 100%. Now, they've probably taken 30 minutes to get to 80%, and it's another 35 minutes to get from 80 to 100%. In the Citroen,
More, I'd say.
Yeah, in the Citroen that I was using at the start, I was getting 61 kilowatts out of the charger. By the end, I was down at 8. So,
Well,
significantly different.
So many of us have mobile phones. Just look at that, for example. The phone will really quickly charge to 80% and then it will slow down. It's the same idea. It's the same chemistry-ish. So I have a power bank that actually has a display on it, and you can see, like, the iPhone will charge certainly up to about maybe 25 watts and then it will trail off. Exact same thing. But yeah, you are wasting your time. The whole point is, like, unless you're driving somewhere really far, surely when you get to 80% of the fast charger, you know have enough to get home and just be on your way.
Yeah, and it's about timing as well. Like, when I'm doing a lot of my long journeys, if I'm not doing a range test, I'm charging to 60, 70%. Driving off again, I might stop again, 60, 70%. So because it's just about the speed of getting up. I would say that it makes sense, if you're driving long journeys and you're going to have to stop, is to drive as close to zero as you feel comfortable with, because the bulk of the speed of charging happens at the start of that charge curve. So if you're, when you plug in at 8, sorry, go on.
What do they say about going down to 0 or close to 0? Is that also, like, is 20 to 80 the sweet spot?
Yeah, 20 to 80 is the sweet spot. They don't, they didn't actually make a huge point about it being the lower end, but they did stress that it's the fast charging, the rough acceleration, and the charging over 90%. Even, up to 90%, they sort of said is all right. So 80 is obviously optimum, but there's no major issue with 90. They feel that from the data that a lot of the damage is being caused beyond 90 and from fast charging.
I do think the not driving hard is a bit of a funny one, because it's a bit like, again, in the petrol diesel world, having a nice 3-litre engine, you're going to stretch its legs from time to time. There was a guy in front of me yesterday in a BYD Seal, the twin motor version with the 3.4 or whatever on the badge at the back, and he kept pulling these huge gaps, and then obviously just getting stuck in traffic. But you've bought the extra motor version for the power, and now you're being told, well, go easy on that now.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you can do what you like with your own car. But what the evidence suggests is that when you come back, and this is what's going to likely be in the future, more of a metric on valuing these cars than necessarily the mileage, because
suspension and tires are easier to replace than the battery.
So if you're going in, you're going to be faced with the prospect of, all right, Mark, we have one here that has 80,000 kilometers on it, but the battery state of health is 90%, or we have one with 40,000 kilometers and the battery state of health is 60%. Obviously an extreme example, but you know which one you're going to go for.
Is battery size relative to damage, or is it just less or more to lose?
It's all individual. I mean, they have three types of tests. So there's the flash one, which is the standard one. Then there's a sort of a premium one. Then there's an expert one. The premium and the expert one involve, actual driving of the car. But they're saying even at the expert one, they don't quote a price because it's individual towards each model. So they're very specific, and even doing one for the Teslas is quite tricky. There's a whole lot of different weird procedures you have to go through. So that's the trickiest one to test. But otherwise it's pretty straightforward. Like they tried the Puma Gen-E that I had. They didn't have data on that yet because it's such a new car, but by the fact of, they'll have that for me fairly soon because they have done it now on my car. So I'm interested to get that data back. So while I was there, I spoke to Alex Millinger, who's from Avalue, and I put some questions to him about what the product is and also what it does. And we can listen to him now. Alex, I've seen a really interesting presentation today on how Avalue works. Tell people who aren't familiar with what the product does, very simply, what do you get from an Avalue report?
You get an independent battery certificate, which produced with our unit produced in Austria in roughly 3 minutes. Just you have to connect the unit to the OBD, put the car in drive mode, and then after 3 minutes you get the whole result where you can see the diagnostic state of health of the battery.
It's probably fair to say that when you're buying an electric car, the state of health of the battery is probably more important than something like mileage. Would it be fair to say that?
Yes, because when we're looking in the battery, and there are different types of driving with the car, the indication of the state of health of the battery is, from my perspective, much more important than just the mileage, because can be different way of driving, aggressive driving, fast charging, all this stuff.
You've done over 300,000 tests on EVs over the past few years. Are there things that consumers should know in terms of keeping their battery healthy?
Yes, we can say, but also we have to admit that different OEMs, different batteries, so we can't make a overall perspective, but what we can say, for example, fast charging. So maybe also make normal charging, slow charging, or just don't keep the car on the charger when it's already by 100% for the next couple of weeks when you go on holiday. So and also you don't need to charge to 100%. You can also, for the battery health, also for 90%.
Yeah, these are things people mightn't necessarily have ever been told. So it's interesting to get that sort of information. If someone wants to get a report, is this something that they can go to their dealership to get, or how do they go about getting one?
So for the moment, they can get in contact directly with Avalue, with our headquarters, and we will link them to a dealer where they can connect it. And we're building more and more infrastructure in Ireland at this moment, and also in other countries, to get them the network where every customer can go and then get their car checked.
Thanks for joining us.
No pun intended there, Paddy, but I'm sure a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, no, look, an interesting product, and I think it's one we'll probably see a little bit more of in the future.
So where do you get them? Like, it's just so, what size is it? Like a Game Boy size?
Well, you don't buy the unit. The unit itself is a test that's done by a dealer at the moment. So
you're not going to use it all the time unless you're in the industry. So
no, you shouldn't need to. NVD are the local resellers of this. And that's NVD who distribute the bulk of the cars in Ireland. But at the moment they're saying if you're a private customer, contact Avalue themselves. Their website's avalue.com, and then they will direct you to a dealer close to you. Test is about €70.
Okay, it's well worth it. Well worth it. If you're thinking about buying a used EV, definitely. And good. Maybe, I don't know if bargaining power is the right word, because if there's alarm bells, you're just going to walk away. There'll be another ID4.
Yeah, there
These
will
things
be.
are-
There will be, and I suppose it's also for yourself, if you've have your own EV for a while, or you're planning on selling it privately as well, that could be an interesting route to go down to give you that extra leverage.
Right, well, still to come on this week's episode of Drivers Republic Podcast. You can, of course, get in touch at driversrepublicpodcast@gmail.com. A motoring icon sadly passed away this week. And is it ever acceptable for your garage or mechanic to bring your car at home for the night to road test it?
Welcome back to the Drivers Republic Podcast, brought to you in association with Dundeel Cars, with Ireland's widest selection of cars for sale from certified trusted dealers. The right car for you is on dundeel.ie. Mark, as a former MX-5 owner,
Yes.
we lost a legend this week.
Although, once again, a car that I probably didn't have it long enough to actually call myself. Tom Matano, the designer of the Mazda Miata, or MX-5. He passed away during the week at 76, God bless him.
Yeah, young enough, and
Yeah.
look, what a great car, and what a piece of motoring history to have created that car.
He started with watching people on horses, and he just wanted the whole being at one with beast and machine and whatever.
Yeah, I remember vividly. My dad was a motoring journalist, and I remember when he got that car first, 1990. And
So it would have been an NA.
Yeah, and it was, he was writing for Sunday Independent, so he got those cars pretty early, and it was one of the first around, and it was just the reaction to this thing was outstanding. And we'd had, there was some other cars at the time, MGTF and a few other bits and bobs. This thing was absolutely blew them out of the water because it was so good. And and still to this day, if you jump into any Mazda MX-5, it's not about power. They're not particularly fast. It's just the most fun you will have. It's incredible. But you've owned one. Tell us your story.
Oh, it was great. It was an NB, which was the second model. So that came out, I think, 1990s. 8, I think maybe was the start of the NBs.
I'm going to say 98, yeah.
So it was the one that didn't have pop-up headlights, which would not pass Euro NCAP safety tests today. They're far too sharp and can dig into pedestrians' legs.
Yeah, they did look good.
And I had driven a few of them before as press cars, and there's just something about one. Even the last ones I would have driven with Mazda Ireland were the ND model, kind of the current model. There was the anniversary version. There was an orange one, Bose sound system, little deflector behind your head. Just a brilliant car, lightweight. 2 liters, 1.6s. There's a 1.5, I think now, because of emissions. Gearbox, unbelievable. Like, if you've never driven one, that's such a tight gearbox. The car I had only had 26,000 miles on it. It had been babied. Loads of service history. Hadn't got rust, because a lot of them can be rust buckets. These are old cars in some cases. Just a very raw, I don't want to say primitive, but pretty primitive little sports car. Just great. And they've often suffered from the hands of hairdressers, Porsche, not needing a hairdresser and having owned a Porsche and an MX-5, a very worthy little car. And if you're snooty about them, more fool you.
Yeah, often I would expect a comment thrown around by someone who's never sat in one or driven one, because if you have spent any time in one, they're just such fun. It makes every single journey feel special. You don't need a radio. You're never going to be tempted to glance at your mobile phone when you're driving an MX-5, because it feels like being on a motorbike. You're so involved. There's so much going on, and you're if you look at the speedometer, you're not actually going that fast.
No, No, they still rev pretty well. There's nowhere really to put your mobile phone. Also, depending on what version you have, mine had a pop-up aerial, so when you turned the ignition, the aerial came up at the back of it.
I love it.
Mine had a hard top as well, which is kind of essential for Ireland, really, because it means you can enjoy them all year round. But they have to make a Tom edition. They have to.
Of course they will. Of course they will. And I think it seems to be a car that Mazda are resisting electrifying. You know, they're going to plow on to the bitter end until they absolutely can't have any choice of leaving it as own petrol engine.
Weight will ruin that car, and unless they come up with some mad battery, the way we all have SSD hard drives now that's the size of your ATM card, I don't know how they'll do it.
And it's a car that they, despite different generations, they haven't really, dialed up the power at any stage because they don't need to. They
140 brake, maybe. I mean, and people have modded theirs, and very interesting things you can do to them. But no, just a cracking little car. One of my kids was like distraught when it was being bought and it was leaving the driveway. So very lovable little things. If you ever get a chance, and they're, you know what, like used ones. I was only looking last night. You get a good one for $9,000.
Yeah, I would quite happily get one, drive one every day, to be honest, because it's just, it's when you get into your car, if you're not, especially if you're working a lot, you don't get into your car that much, to be getting into something that gives you that smile on your face, and every journey is an event. That's, there's so much to be said about that. Do you miss yours a bit?
I do miss, as I've mentioned on this podcast, some of the repair bills for the 911 are different gravy.
You wouldn't be getting those in the Mazda.
I didn't have to do it. I put some tires on the Mazda. That was it. Flew through the NCT. The Porsche didn't fly through the NCT the first time it was NCT'd, which I thought was hilarious, like the difference in value. No issues. Started every time. A non-interference engine, so really very little can go wrong in them if you just service them and keep an eye on them. Just a great little thing. And if you do buy one, you'll, at this stage, unless you're buying one of the newer ones, obviously, which will have some depreciation, you'll probably get your money back or close to your money back afterwards. Cheap tax, just a very affordable. I think, what was my, I think my insurance with Aviva was like €300 or something. It was.
And there's plenty now that are 30 years old as well. So,
classic tax.
You'll find classic tax and insurance. So, it's the way to go. Now, Mark.
We got a comment from a listener called Leah, who has a beautiful Alfa Romeo in that lovely alpha blue color. And she had dealt with a workshop who were working on the car. And basically, the car had been taken home overnight to test it.
Right.
And this kind of question quite often sparks debate. In a slightly related version, the drop and go parking at Dublin Airport, a colleague of ours parked a Skoda Octavia RS in there start of the summer.
Yeah. And
in the terms and conditions of drop and go, they can move your car to a long-term car park if they don't have enough space in the short term. But when you come back from your holidays, it will be back in the short-term car park. But it clearly says your car needs a tax disc and a valid NCT because they'll be used on public roads. But again, there's quite a lot of mileage put onto this Octavia RS, and they responded on TikTok to the person who had an issue. They're like, the car was well driven. It's like, now look, Skoda Ireland didn't care because they just saw the funny side of it. But people do get a little bit precious, and I'm just wondering, rightly or wrongly, my own situation, our Nissan Ariya had a little bit of a cosmetic rear ending from an old Deer, I think at the end of last year, and it was literally just minor stuff, but it did need a new bumper. It had to be resprayed. And in lots of modern cars, obviously there's location services in the car, so you can see where it is, and you can leave that on, or you can turn it off if you've got something to hide. So we got a notification on the Nissan app to say that the location thing had been turned off when it was in the workshop, and thought that was a bit strange. So we asked the question, how come why did you turn that off? And straight away they were like, well, why did you need it on? I was like, well, just because it's always been on. That's why. And then when we pressed them a little bit more,
my car, I can do what I want with it.
Press them a bit more on it. They were like, oh, well, we had to bring it home, to test it overnight, and I just thought, but it was a bumper being resprayed. So one, do places use it as a mobility solution? I've no doubt there are certain, like if you have a misfire or there's something majorly done with your car, that they have to spend a bit of time, and you're in a workshop all day. So within a reasonable mileage distance, whoever's working in your car brings it home. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think the bumper example is cheeky, and I think it's probably not something that you should see happen. I mean, I agree with you. If there's been an engine issue, or if there's been some, something that affected the way the car drove, that would require a road test, fine. But in this case, absolutely not. And it does beg the question: do we need to start keeping a closer eye on our cars when we hand them over to a third party? Because there are other issues like, what are they doing when they're in your car? Is that are they using it for something else? God knows.
Yeah, I've heard stories over the years where they have been used, and where cars were seen by other people. If you have a standout car, someone might see it. Obviously there's the added wear and tear put on. Look, but anyway, it's just, why can it not be tested during working hours? What is the reason for bringing the car home overnight? And
I guess this has probably been going on for years, and now we just have the technology to see when and exactly how it happens.
I mean, it's very easy to slip. Look, maybe you'd be ultra paranoid to be doing this, but you could just slip an AirTag in your car.
Well, would an AirTag not notify someone that it's in the car?
Yeah, I have heard this one as well, where like if you have it from a theft point of view, it will pop up on someone else's iPhone, for example.
Yeah.
Now, I don't get notifications about AirTags all day long when I'm going around my everyday life, but I'm
sure
they're out there.
I think it's when it's connected to your phone or whatever. I don't know. I've never put one in a car for someone, but
Now, equally, if your car's getting worked on and you have a dash cam on, right, and that's last weekend I was home with my parents and I could see the dash cam was on in the L-Rock, and I was like, why is that on? Well, because it's easier than disconnecting it. And I was like, but that's going to use the battery. It doesn't use very much. I was like, okay, right, whatever. But,
leave them at it.
If you're a bunch of lads in a workshop, or girls, whatever, you don't want, a customer's car recording your, you're working on a car, you're having a chat. What are you doing this weekend? How are you getting on your woman?
Yeah.
Oh, your man's wrecking me head.
Exactly.
That shouldn't be recorded either.
No.
So I have seen people kind of lose their mind over people disconnecting dash cams. Now, I've also seen, I think in the NCT, it actually says, please disconnect any sort of, because it's a privacy issue there, no doubt about it,
Yeah.
But,
well, look, hopefully that hopefully that won't happen to you again. But I think it would be an idea for people, if they are handing in their car to a car park, to a dealership, to zero the trip on their car. So just go into your trip computer, reset all of the trip 1, 2, to whatever else there, all to zero, hand over the keys, and then you should have a fairly clear picture. Now, the dealership might reset the trip themselves, but even if you
record the mileage,
exactly. But even if you record the mileage, you'll have a decent idea, because it's a bit naughty.
Now, maybe that's people being really, really paranoid, and it's like, relax, but I think your pride and joy going home for a rally overnight, maybe, especially if it's something nice, not really necessary.
No, very cheeky. Next week, Mark, I'm going to have the Done Deal price report. Exclusively for, well, probably not exclusively, but we'll have a good discussion about that. Some interesting things in terms of pricing of used cars happening in the used car market. So lots to tell you on that next week.
I heard a very interesting fact about Done Deal. You can maybe verify this or not. So we've all seen ads for new cars or used car in a garage, and it says pictures coming soon or car in prep, and there's no actual pictures of the car. Is it much harder to sell a car without pictures?
Yeah, those cars will.
Makes sense as well.
Those cars won't sell as quickly. So, that's why we'd always encourage people to have decent photographs. Even if they're selling the car privately, lots of pictures and decent pictures. Don't just sort of half-ass it, because it really does make a difference. So, and those those dealers that don't put them up or have car coming soon, they don't do as well. The interesting feature though we've added, and something that you and I before both said was used to annoy us when people wouldn't put the price up, or they put, some made up price. There's now a filter that you click that and it will show you cars will exclude all those cars that don't have a price, or it even includes those makey uppy prices 1, 2, 3, 4 and the like. So it excludes all those.
So people advertising can still do that, but you can weed them out.
Yeah, you can weed them out with a fairly easy click. So it's now one of those functionalities that we've been asking for before is now there. So they did listen to us, Mark.
That's much handier. Good. Well, it's good to know. Next week I'll be reporting on quite a few things, especially the Volkswagen Amarok Panamericana version.
Right. CO2 friendly, I suspect.
Oh, these things are they're
EV.
quite practical for people if you have a business and you can write off the VAT and you can claim back the diesel. And yeah, for some people. Other people, they feel like they're an extension of another part of their male anatomy.
Right, okay.
People are very split about pickup trucks. If you need one, fine. But if you don't, people get very triggered by them.
Any travelling next week?
No travelling next week, no. No, a bit more radio work and a bit more minding children. So my next current trip is not till the middle of October to see drive the new Nissan Leaf in Copenhagen.
Very interesting. Yeah, my colleague Dave O'Keefe will be there joining you on that one. So,
right. Actually, Dave met a nice gentleman up in where we all film lots of cars in Zippet in the Dublin Mountains there last night, and Dave actually messaged me, and I'd say he probably thought at one point there was a hidden camera because an elderly gentleman came up and asked Dave, did he know me? And he knew everything. He knew everything about the channel, the cars. So I said, Dave, did you get his name? We'd give him a shout out. He goes, I didn't. But his wife said he watches all your stuff. I was like, okay, thanks.
Well, it's nice to know someone's watching, right?
At least one person. Yeah. So shout out to that man up in the Dublin Mountains walking his dog who met Dave. And actually, the only other time I've ever had comments from women on the channel was that collaboration I did with Dave and the Kia EV3, and he had the Skoda Elrock. And these women came out of nowhere commenting on my channel, who obviously
he's a beautiful man, in fairness.
They're subscribers. And not only that, but he's a wakeboarder. So like he has it all going on. He's also ripped, happily attached.
Yeah, he's ripped. He's got model good looks. And
he's terribly nice.
And they've also just taken in a dishevelled elf like me, so I don't know what's going on with the world.
He'll learn from you. Don't worry. No doubt about it. Right. Well, look, thanks for watching and listening, and make sure you subscribe and maybe share the podcast if it's of use to anyone. Lots of interesting industry stuff discussed this week on the channel as well. So we'll see you soon.
Bye for now.